My name is Sarah Calloway. I'm 34 years old. And 5 years ago, my sister made one phone call that erased me from my family completely. She told my parents I had dropped out of medical school, that I was living on the streets, that I had fallen apart. My mother cried for a week. My father said, and I quote, "She was always the weak one." They blocked my number that same night. What my sister did not tell them, what she made sure they would never find out, is that I was 3 floors deep in an operating room at the time of that phone call. Scrubbed in, scalpel in hand, saving a life. And 5 years later, on a Tuesday night in January, the doors of my trauma bay swung open, and the paramedics rushed in a stretcher. The patient was bleeding internally. Unstable vitals. No time. I picked up the intake tablet, swiped to the patient file, and read the name. My sister. And behind the stretcher, running, screaming her name, my parents. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what kind of silence 5 years actually sounds like. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. 2 daughters, 1 spotlight. And it never once pointed at me. My sister Dana is 4 years older. She was the kind of person who filled every room she walked into. Loud, funny, magnetic. My parents adored her for it. My father coached her soccer team. My mother drove 2 hours every weekend for her dance competitions. I was the quiet one. The one with a book. The one who sat at the dinner table and said nothing because nothing I said ever landed the way Dana's words did. I was not rebellious. I was not difficult. I was simply unnoticed. And there is a difference between being forgotten and never being seen in the first place. I learned that difference early. 7th grade. I placed first in the regional science competition. First place out of 200 students. I came home with a trophy taller than my backpack. My father looked up from the television, nodded, and said, "That's nice, kiddo." That same evening, Dana got a call back for a local commercial. The family went out to dinner to celebrate. I left the trophy on the kitchen counter. Nobody moved it for a week. Then one day it was just gone. I never asked where. I made a decision that night, sitting alone in my room. If I couldn't be the daughter they noticed, I would become the daughter they could not ignore. The letter came on a Thursday morning. Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. My mother called everyone she knew. My father sat at the kitchen table and read the letter 3 times. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said 5 words I had waited 18 years to hear. "I always knew you would." It wasn't much, but I held it like oxygen. Dana was visiting that weekend. She smiled when she heard the news. But her eyes were doing something else entirely, calculating, recalibrating. I know that now. At the time, I just thought she was tired from the drive. That week, she started calling me every day. "How's the program? Who are your professors? What's your schedule like?" She remembered every detail I gave her. I thought my sister was finally seeing me. I was feeding her a weapon. 2nd year of medical school. That is when everything cracked open. My best friend and roommate was a woman named Claire Merritt. She had grown up in foster care, no family, no safety net, and she was the single reason I survived first year. When I called home during exam week and my mother said, "Not now, Sarah. Dana's having a hard time at work," it was Claire who sat with me on our apartment floor and said, "Their loss. Now get up. We have anatomy to memorize." Claire was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer in the fall of my 2nd year. No family. No one else. I went to the dean the next morning, explained the situation. He approved a formal leave of absence, 1 semester, caregiver status, fully documented, my spot held. I would return in January. Everything was legal, everything was on paper. I moved into Claire's spare room, drove her to chemo, held her hand through every bad night. I called Dana to tell her. I don't know why. Maybe I still believed she was the sister she had been pretending to be. Her voice was warm, concerned. Oh my God, Sarah. Take all the time you need. I won't say a word to Mom and Dad. I know they'd only worry. 3 days later, she called our parents. The call came at midnight. I was sitting next to Claire's hospital bed. Dad, your sister told us everything. His voice was flat, cold. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. Dad, that's not. She showed us the messages. She showed us proof. I pressed my hand against the wall to keep from falling. What messages? Dad, I'm in a hospital right now. I'm taking care of my friend. Monica said you'd say exactly that. A pause. She said you'd have a story ready. My mother got on the line. Her voice was shaking. How could you lie to us for a whole year, Sarah? Mom, please. I filed a leave of absence. I can show you the paperwork. I can give you the dean's number. Enough. Dad again. Don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth. The line went dead. I sat on that hospital floor for 20 minutes. Claire's 4 beeped on the other side of the curtain. My phone screen still showed the call duration. 3 minutes and 48 seconds. That is how long it took my parents to erase me. I tried. I need you to know that I tried everything. Over the next 5 days, I called 14 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. By the 4th call, my father's number was blocked. My mother blocked me 2 days later. I sent 2 emails. One short, one long. The long one had my leave of absence paperwork attached, signed by the dean, stamped with the registrar's seal. I included the dean's direct phone number. I included Claire's oncologist's name. I gave them every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. Neither email received a response. I wrote a handwritten letter, mailed it priority from Baltimore. 5 days later it came back. Returned to sender. Unopened. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I called my Aunt Patricia, my father's younger sister, the only person in that family who had ever treated me like I mattered. She called my father that same evening. I know because she called me back 40 minutes later, voice heavy. He told me to stay out of it, sweetheart. He said you've made your bed. 5 days. 14 calls. 2 emails. 1 letter. 1 intermediary. Every single attempt rejected, blocked, or returned. On the 6th day, I stopped. Not because I gave up. Because I finally understood something I should have known for years. They had made their choice long before Dana made that phone call. She had simply given them permission to stop pretending. Claire died on a Sunday morning in November. Quiet. Just the monitor going flat and the pale gray light through the hospice window. I was the only one in the room. I organized a small funeral. 7 people came. I stood at the front of a chapel that could hold 80 people and read a eulogy to rows of empty pews. I did not cry. Not because I was not broken, but because I had been crying for 3 months and there was simply nothing left. That night, I sat alone in our apartment. Her coffee mug was still on the counter. Her jacket still hung by the door. I opened my laptop and stared at the re-enrollment form. Then I found it, tucked inside her copy of Grey's Anatomy. There was a yellow sticky note in her handwriting, shaky but deliberate. Finish what you started, Sarah. Become the doctor I know you are. Don't let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are. She had written it weeks before she died. She knew she would not be there when I needed the push. I closed the laptop, opened it again, filled out the form. 2 choices, crumble or climb. I chose to climb, not for my parents, not for revenge, for Claire, and for the version of myself she believed in. I went back in January. No family support, no safety net. I took out additional loans, picked up a part-time research position, and ate hospital cafeteria food more times than I will ever admit publicly. Medical school does not care about your personal life. Anatomy exams do not pause because your family disowned you. 12-hour clinical rotations do not get shorter because you cried in the supply closet at 2 in the morning. So I stopped crying, and I started working. I worked like my life depended on it, because in every way that mattered, it did. I graduated on time, with honors. No one from Ohio came. I matched into a surgical residency at Hargrove Medical Center, a level 1 trauma center, one of the busiest in the state. That is where I met Dr. Elaine Marsh, chief of surgery, 61 years old, built like a steel cable wrapped in a white coat. She became the mentor I needed and the mother figure I had lost. Third year of residency, I met Daniel Reeves, a civil rights attorney doing pro bono work at a clinic near the hospital. Calm voice, dry humor. The first person I told the full story to who did not flinch, did not pity me, did not try to fix it. He just listened. Then he said, "You deserve better." 4 words. That was enough. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in Dr. Marsh's backyard. 30 guests. Daniel's mother walked me down the aisle. I sent an invitation to Ohio. It came back the same way my letter had. Unopened. 5 years passed. I became someone they would not recognize. Chief of Trauma Surgery at Hargrove Medical Center. A house with a porch that gets good morning light. A husband who makes me laugh every single day. A life built brick by brick with my own hands. But there is a specific kind of ache that never fully disappears. It lives in the space between your ribs, right where a family is supposed to be. Last month, Aunt Patricia called with something different in her voice. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you about Dana. Something concerning." Before she could finish, my pager went off. Trauma activation. I told her I'd call her back. I never got the chance. Because what Patricia was trying to warn me about was already on its way, traveling down the interstate at 60 miles an hour in a car that was about to run a red light. And within the hour, it would be lying on my operating table, bleeding, unconscious, with my name on the chart. Thursday night, January, 2:54 in the morning. The pager pulled me out of a dead sleep. Level 1 trauma. MVC, single female, 32. Blunt abdominal trauma. Hemodynamically unstable. ETA 9 minutes. I was dressed in 4 minutes. Driving in 6. The roads were empty and wet. That particular shade of black January gives you in the Midwest. I ran through the case in my head the way I always do. Mechanism of injury. Probable organ involvement. Surgical options. Blunt abdominal trauma. Unstable vitals. Likely splenic rupture. Possible liver involvement. I had done this surgery 100 times. I badged in through the ambulance bay and walked straight to the trauma bay. My team was already assembling. I picked up the intake tablet from the charge nurse's station and swiped to the incoming chart. Patient, Dana Calloway, DOB, March 3rd, 1988. Emergency contact, Robert Calloway, father. I stopped walking. The hallway noise, the beeping, the intercom, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, it all pulled back like a tide. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, I was not a surgeon. I was a 24-year-old sitting on a hospital floor in Baltimore, phone still warm in my hand, listening to a dial tone. The stretcher came fast. Dana was strapped down, unconscious, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breaths, blood on like she had aged a decade. Hair thinner, face drawn. She was in a bathrobe, slippers on the wrong feet. My father was in flannel and jeans, thrown on in a panic. "That's my daughter," he shouted past the triage nurse. "Where are they taking her? I need the doctor in charge." "She's all we have," he said to no one in particular. "Please. She's all we have." I heard it through the partition glass. Every word. "She's all we have." As if I had never existed. I stepped into the scrub room alone, turned on the faucet, let the water run hot over my hands, looked at myself in the steel mirror above the sink. 30 seconds. That is all I gave myself. I had a woman on my table with a ruptured spleen and what looked like a liver laceration. She was losing blood faster than we could replace it. She would die in the next 30 minutes if the best surgeon in this building did not operate. And the best surgeon in this building was me. I paged Dr. Okafor directly. "I have a conflict of interest. The patient is a family member. I'm disclosing it now and documenting in the chart. If at any point my judgment is compromised, you take the lead. No questions asked." His voice was steady. "Understood, Chief." Then I pulled on fresh gloves, pushed through the hors d'oeuvres, and looked down at my sister's face. For 3 seconds, she was not the woman who destroyed my life. She was a body on my table. And that was exactly how I needed her to be. Scalpel. 3 hours and 50 minutes. Ruptured spleen. Removed. Grade 3 liver laceration. Repaired, layer by painstaking layer. Internal bleeding from 2 mesenteric vessels. Clamped, cauterized, controlled. I did not speak unless I needed to. Suction. Clamp. Retract. My hands moved the way they have been trained to move. Steady, deliberate. Fast when speed mattered. Slow when precision mattered more. At 6:52 in the morning, I placed the final closing stitch. Dana's vitals were stable. She was alive. Dr. Okafor pulled down his mask. "That was flawless, Sarah." "I'll talk to the family," I said. The waiting room had that fluorescent stillness hospitals get at 7 in the morning. And in the center row, rigid, sleepless, terrified, were my parents. I pushed through the double doors. Still in my surgical scrubs. My badge hanging at chest level. Dr. Sarah Calloway, MD, FACS, Chief of Trauma Surgery. My father stood. He always stood first. "Doctor, how is she?" "Is Dana?" He stopped. His eyes dropped to my badge, rose to my face, dropped to the badge again. I watched the recognition move through him like something physical, a tremor that started in his hands and climbed slowly to his jaw. My mother looked up half a second later. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her hand shot to my father's arm and gripped it, hard enough, I would later learn, to leave bruises shaped like 4 fingertips. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds that held 5 years. I spoke first. Calm. Clinical. "Mr. and Mrs. Calloway. I'm Dr. Calloway, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Your daughter Dana sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration in the accident. Surgery was successful. She is stable and currently in the ICU. Mr. and Mrs. Calloway. Not mom. Not dad." I watched that land. I watched it cut. My mother moved first. She took a step toward me, arms lifted. "Sarah." "Oh my God. Sarah." I stepped back. Half a step. Polite. Unmistakable. She froze. Her hands hung in the air between us. Then slowly, painfully, dropped to her sides. My father's voice came out like gravel. "You're a doctor." "I am." "You're the chief." "I am." But Dana said. He stopped, opened his you I dropped out, that I had a boyfriend with a drug problem, that I was living on the streets. I kept my voice level. No shaking, no tears. None of it was true. Not a single word. I called 14 times in 5 days. I sent 2 emails with my paperwork attached. I mailed a handwritten letter. You sent it back unopened. I asked Aunt Patricia to intervene. Dad told her to stay out of it. I was not accusing. I was reciting. Facts do not need volume. My father stared at the floor. I know where your daughter is, I said quietly. I just spent 3 hours and 50 minutes making sure she survives. So yes, Dad, I am aware of where she is. He had nothing. For the first time in my life, my father had absolutely nothing. The silence was doing the work I never could. I set conditions, not ultimatums. Conditions. There is a difference. Dana would send a written correction to every family member she had lied to. Every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who had spent 5 years believing I was in rehab or living on the streets. All of it corrected. In writing. My parents would begin family counseling. Not for me. For themselves. To understand how they had believed a lie about their own daughter for 5 years without once picking up the phone to verify it. We don't do that in this family, my father said. That, I said, is exactly why we're here. My mother put her hand on his arm. He looked at her, then at me. Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. Fine. I stood to leave, then turned back. You were not at my wedding. That happened. We cannot undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, you start now. Not with grand gestures. With consistency. Apologies expire. Boundaries don't. Dana sent the email on a Wednesday night. 3 paragraphs. No excuses. Just the facts. She had lied about my leaving medical school. She had fabricated evidence. She had maintained the deception for 5 years. She had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, Sarah never abandoned this family. I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me. Nobody punished Dana. They simply stopped believing her. And for someone who had built her entire identity on being believed, that was punishment enough. My parents started counseling in February. My mother took to it immediately. My father struggled. But he went. Every week. Without complaint. That was the first sign of change. 3 weeks in, my mother mailed me a letter. Handwritten. The irony was not lost on either of us. I failed you, she wrote, not just when I believed Dana, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I read it at the kitchen table. Daniel was in the next room, pretending not to listen. I did not cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep things that matter. Claire's sticky note, my returned letters, the wedding invitation that came back unopened, and I placed it inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply rearranging what you carry. My name is Dr. Sarah Calloway. I am 34 years old. I did not get revenge on my sister. I did not need revenge. I became someone who didn't need it. And that turned out to be the most devastating response of all. Not a scheme. Not a plan. Just a life lived fully on my own terms. She carries my surgical scar on her body. 7 inches, left upper abdomen, fading slowly from red to white. Every time she catches her reflection, She will see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase. The sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, whether you are the one who was silenced or the one who did the silencing, I want to tell you something. The truth does not expire. It does not matter if it takes 5 days or 5 years. The truth has a patient way of showing up exactly when it is needed most. You cannot rush it, but you cannot outrun it either. I did not wait for my family to see me. I stopped waiting. I saw myself first. I built the life I deserved, with the people who showed up. And when the others finally turned around, they found a door that I control. I decide when it opens. I decide how wide. I decide who walks through.